Hi, I am Rabbi Mendel Kastel, and welcome to Navigating Anti-Semitism, a practical podcast that opens up real conversations about how anti-Semitism is showing up in everyday Australian life. We'll explore how anti-Semitism impacts identity and everyday safety through 5 key themes: health, support, resilience, education, and awareness, and how we can respond with strength, support, and care. Across the series, we'll hear from community voices, experts, and advocates to better understand what's happening in our communities and how we can work together to create safer, more inclusive spaces for all. Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Zalman. It's nice to have you with us all the way from the USA. In today's podcast, we're going to continue talking about the work that we're doing to support people who are experiencing anti-Semitism and giving them some skills and some learnings from other parts of the world. So it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. It's my honor.
So Rabbi Zalman is a leading voice in the field of Jewish personal development and mental wellness. Zalman is the director of the Wellness Institute, which is part of the JLI, and the creator of a program called Unbreakable, a 3-part course and self-study program designed to build Jewish resilience through identity, purpose, and inner strength. Rabbi Zalman blends ancient Jewish wisdom and modern psychology to help people build resilience, purpose, and inner strength. I am the CEO of Jewish House, where we have a program, besides all our crisis work, to be able to support people who are experiencing the effects of anti-Semitism on their mental well-being. And we look to be able to, as part of our overall programs, to support them, to give them the opportunity to really look at their identity, their faith, and their well-being, and how that can all play together to support them at this time. So let's talk about the amazing program Unbreakable, which is described as a journey of self-mastery. Can you share what inspired you to create it and why it feels especially relevant now?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you so much for the work you do. So what inspired us to create Unbreakable? So it goes back to before October 7th, where the Wellness Institute developed courses to teach resilience in schools. And we found immediately post October 7th, we received amazing feedback from those people who had received the skills that they had learned and were in the midst of processing some of the most difficult horrors, and difficult is not the word to describe it, that our nation has ever experienced before, but we were actually living it in real time. It was unfolding for us. And unlike now, almost 2 years later, looking back on it, where we've somewhat become numb to some of the atrocities that went on, at the time, it was way more than any human being could tolerate psychologically. But this course specifically was triggered by a request from the World Zionist Organization. Racheli Baratz-Ricks, who leads the department for combating anti-Semitism and building resilience, reached out to us about the opportunity of us adapting some of our content to be able to help support Jewish youth primarily, but also Jewish adults in being able to deal with the mental health impact of what was going on.
So initially this was created for youth, as you mentioned. And I'm sure you've seen some great feedback from that. We are now basically getting ready to launch the adult version and also the self-guided version. So it's quite an exciting opportunity, and to do this in collaboration between Jewish House and the Wellness Institute is really special. But what's that transition been like from a program that works by being presented, guided, to creating a program that will be self-guided, as well as changing it from, or adding a component to be able to make it work for adults as well?
Yeah, so for adults was the easier task, I would say, because the situations may be different, but the core resilience skills are the same. This is really the mechanics of how human beings work. This is how our psyche works. This is how we respond. And most of the skills, unfortunately, people only pick up as adults. So they really mostly catered to adults, but the core skills are very much the same.
So how the Jewish teachings and the program that you're doing help reframe mental and emotional struggles, not as a weakness, but a moment of strength and resilience?
Maybe I'll start with failure, because failure is easier to tolerate than trauma. Over time, we come to realize that these are really growth processes. No success happens without failure. But the same is true with traumatic difficulties as well, where these are events that shake up our lives, but that discomfort brings out within us some things that we didn't know we were even capable of. We would never have reached without that. And we can become complacent sometimes and thinking lazy, maybe to make real change and real growth in our lives. And sometimes, as we should never have any difficulties that are too difficult for us to handle. But the concept of difficulty and challenge, in its essence, is there to really spur us to grow. Anxiety, in and of its own, is not a negative. It's an alarm system. It's our way of saying, you've got to pay attention to something here, and you've got to utilize it in a positive way. So it cannot be that the end goal of the pain that we might be experiencing is the pain itself. There must be some kind of growth that comes from it.
But something that you've done here, which is bringing psychology and Torah together. Give us some example of Jewish teaching, how it aligns with what we know about the psyche.
Mm-hmm. So in the 50s, 60s, Tim Beck came out with cognitive theory. It's now CBT practice. Cognitive behavioral therapy is a gold standard for many mental health challenges as far as a clinical approach. But if we go back 1,000 years, Maimonides speaks about cognitive theory as if it was already in practice in his time. Just to give an example, when we have a command, God commands us, you shall love the Lord your God, or love your fellow as yourself, the golden rule. How can you expect love on demand? So the Rambam, Maimonides, asked this question, and his instinctive response is, it's not a mitzvah to feel emotion. The mitzvah is to think. The mitzvah is to be cognizant of all the wonderful things that Hashem does for us, all the wonderful things that there is to love about another person, and the cognition will automatically trigger emotion. When I was looking through the research on post-traumatic growth, I found a meta-analysis of all the various different coping mechanisms, responses that people have to traumatic experiences. And they were looking at the correlations between those responses and those coping mechanisms and people's actual experiences of post-traumatic growth. So they're able to measure which coping mechanism was most likely was more likely than others to lead to post-traumatic growth. And what they found was that by far the most impactful coping mechanism was religious coping. What's more fascinating than that is that they were able to segment religious coping, separate that out from spiritual coping. Religious coping was double as impactful in terms of being able to produce post-traumatic growth than spiritual coping without religious coping. So faith plays a huge role in our ability to respond to challenges. The way more observation is going on in the scientific space in terms of what is effective and not. So once we have the research out there showing us what works, we can very easily go back and kind of backtrack and say, well, where are those Torah teachings that have told us this all along? So in a way, that our content, an approach we take with our content, is using the best in evidence-based research, but then teaching that through the lens of Torah and Torah teachings that authentically espouse the very same systems.
So you make a very interesting point about religion and faith. Let's say I wasn't religious. What does faith look like? Does it mean I need to become religious, or is there more to it than, and how does it look, I guess, across different religions and cultures?
The core value of faith is that when your world falls apart, when the things going on in your world are way beyond anything you could potentially tolerate, given your own abilities, So faith gives you a frame that's way bigger than yourself. That there's a higher power involved, that you don't have to carry it all on your own shoulders. And that is equally applicable in any faith group, but I would say that's more closely associated with spirituality than religious faith in particular. And the advantage of religious faith is not only are you able to surrender and say there's something bigger and grander than you going on, but also gives you something to do about it. It also gives you a way to turn it into action, turn pain into purpose through a more performance-based approach, where when you can say Kaddish, it's not just that you are able to deal with a loss, right? But it also gives you something to do and makes you feel like you can help the situation in some way through some kind of performance.
So, would you say to be able to have a conversation with God at a time like that you're going through something difficult, or even when you're getting something fantastic, to be able to be grateful to God? Is that part of faith, that those dialogues, those conversations, those challenges, even with the tussle with God?
Personally, there's one of the first teachings in the Shulchan Aruch is a teaching of Rabbi Akiva that a person should always repeat to themselves this mantra that everything that God does is for the best. And it's a terrible thing to say to someone else when they're going through something difficult. But the research on post-traumatic growth shows that it's one of the best things that you could believe in yourself in terms of your ability to view the situation in such a way that it will lead to post-traumatic growth. Because believing that everything happens for a reason, everything has some kind of inherent purpose associated with it, that itself inspires you to find and seek out that purpose, figure out what that purpose is, and then ultimately realize that purpose.
And then we have in Jewish tradition, when we get up in the morning, we say Modani, which basically means, we're grateful to be alive today. Another interesting one is a verse that we say, which is that we take upon ourselves to be kind to each other. So how do these sort of two traditions or laws almost play into this connecting with faith, connecting with people, connecting with the world in a positive way?
So the first aspect of that, I believe, is not taking for granted. When we start our day with a recognition that don't take what you have for granted, the fact that you woke up and you're able to live and to see a new day. In the third lesson of Unbreakable, we focus on optimism. And we don't focus on optimism as like these rose-colored glasses you put on and you see the world as being a wonderful place when it's not, but rather as a mechanism to counter negativity bias, where when we get into a state of crisis, when we get into a state of difficulty, it seems like that's our whole world. There's nothing else. Right? We cannot fathom, we cannot think about all the good things that are happening. So Judaism has these built-in mechanisms where I would add in a third practice that probably encompasses some of that as well. So recognizing that cognitive distortion that we have to kind of pay so much attention to the negative and actively taking measures to counterbalance that with things that we can do to notice and appreciate the good stuff is how we build optimism. It's how we recognize, hey, it's not just bad stuff going on here, there's good stuff. And that's how we get a realistic perspective on what's going on. We're not trying to see the world from rose-colored glasses. Instead, we're trying to counterbalance for a negativity bias that we have.
So what does true resilience look like? Is it about coping? Is it about bouncing back? Is it about staying calm? Or is it something deeper than that?
Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. It is both about coping, bouncing back, staying calm, and something deeper. I think if you kind of take it down to its core, the core resilience skill, the way I understand it, and the way we develop it out in the course, is agency. And so if you have an easy solution to the challenge, it's not a real challenge. You just practice that easy solution and move on. Where things become really challenging is where we feel stuck, where we feel like we don't have the resources to respond as we need to the situation. That's where it becomes overwhelming. That's where we start feeling helpless and hopeless and like a victim. And that is where the core that's where resilience comes in. Because resilience is that ability to recognize that I still have control in that situation. I may not have control of everything in that situation, but my ability to focus on those things that I do have control and accept those things that are outside of my control as perhaps being futile to even think about and contemplate, because they'll cause me to feel more like a victim, which won't be helpful to the situation. That, I believe, is at the core of resilience. But then the question becomes, how do you give people that sense of agency in all sorts of different circumstances? Because when it comes to emotional situations, we feel like it's completely out of our control. We have a catastrophic event that happens, or not even a catastrophic event, but something that is really gut wrenching, and we emotionally break down. And that is a natural response. There's nothing wrong in terms of that response. It's a purely healthy response, and in proportion to the situation of what happened. But nevertheless, we still have a degree of agency even in the realm of emotion. Why? Because when we can focus on what we have within our control, so the core resilience skill is recognizing, as Viktor Frankl liked to put it, that between the events that happen to us, the circumstances that we face, and our responses is a choice, is that space of choice. And being able to really harness that choice, being able to take advantage of that choice, and recognizing that you're not a victim of your situation, but rather you are, you have, there are choices you can make. You are fully in control of the way you respond to your situation. That's where resilience comes from. And how to apply that in various different contexts, there are various skills involved. They're all children of that kind of the primary resilience skill, which is a sense of agency.
So let's dive into Unbreakable and give us a bit of I guess, a sneak preview of some of the tools that will really make a difference to help people navigate stress, fear, identity-based discrimination. Just give us a bit of a teaser, if you like, of some of the tools which hopefully we'll be able to use or go through the full course online very soon as we put it up on our website.
So Unbreakable, we focus on 3 core skills. I guess a little bit of a backdrop first. Unbreakable is not a complete guide to dealing with anti-Semitism. That's not what it was designed to do. It's not there to teach you how to defend against anti-Semitism. It's not there to tell you how to stop anti-Semitism or even to fight anti-Semitism effectively. What it's there to do is it recognizes that the primary way anti-Semitism affects many people today is in not that they're afraid of getting punched in the street, or not that they're actually going to get punched in the street. Unfortunately, many are, but that people are afraid and feel insecure as a result of the anti-Semitism that goes on. It's the psychological impact of anti-Semitism is the insecurity that it creates is how anti-Semitism affects most people. So our goal with Unbreakable was to address those particular aspects, give people that sense of control in the way they respond to anti-Semitism, not to feel like a victim. So that's the skill number 1, a sense of agency, recognizing that they can stay in control of the situation. And number 2, which I think is a primary skill, that is recognizing the role of cognition in the soul, thoughts, being able to maintain a realistic outlook. It's very easy to kind of look around and see all the terrible things going on and make parallels to 1930s Europe and come to a conclusion that there's going to be a Holocaust tomorrow, and that's far from the reality. To be able to then put things in perspective and say, well, what if that is true? What is not true? And even when sometimes things are true and are very difficult to accept, we also have the choice to be able to think about, is it something that's helpful for us to think about right now? Is it useful? Is it going to enhance the outcome of this experience? Am I going to be able? Is it going to make me stronger or weaker to contemplate these thoughts? So we give people control over their psyche, over their thought space. And the third lesson focuses on optimism. And I discussed that a little bit earlier about what that looks like. In a nutshell, we focus on zooming out, being able to kind of combat the cognitive tunneling that happens from crisis, being able to notice all the good things that are happening alongside the bad things, all the good people, all the good players alongside the bad players. Could be going through a really rough time right now, but there have been good times before, and there will be good times again. So putting that all in perspective enables us to kind of become more optimistic about the future from a realistic place. So those are the three primary tools that we focus on. And I would say those are core CBT skills to be able to deal with any challenge. In this curriculum, we've specifically adapted those to deal with scenarios relating to anti-Semitism and how we might process those types of scenarios.
So many people, particularly young people and young adults, feel very disconnected from their Jewish identity. During times like this, during difficult times, they want to be able to reconnect. What does that look like in a personal sort of sense?
So I think a lot of people get a bad head start at Hebrew school, where Judaism becomes about the do's and the don'ts, and less about the insight, less about the less personal, less about me understanding myself, my place in this world, my role, responsibilities in this world, and so on. It kind of jumps to the end, missing the whole middle part, the core connection that people have. So kind of people are disengaged and are told to do all these things, so they can walk away feeling like Judaism is this dogmatic dictatorship telling them, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this, rather than opening up people's eyes to recognizing, well, how do you lead an ultimately meaningful life? How do you understand the conflicts that are going on inside of yourself? How do you understand and unlock your own signature strengths, your own innate capabilities that, given a routine and, the whole life cycle, if you go through it without kind of that sense of self-reflection, you may miss out on that unique gift that you are to the world, and being able to unpack that and fully cash that in. So that is ultimately what Judaism offers us. And yes, the performance aspects of that are components of it. If you can either just hear the do's and the don'ts of Shabbat, or you can hear that work-life balance, that being and becoming, that interplay of us on the one hand achieving and being the best us and making the best world we can possibly make, but on the other hand also recognizing that inherent value that we have as human beings, that is infinite value, even if we don't do anything, even if we don't achieve anything. So these types of messages are ones that Judaism imparts, and what the performances are intended to impart. And sometimes we don't tune into. And I think opportunities like these, to where we face challenges, and that forces us to open up our eyes to some of the discomforts that exist in this world, and maybe get us to dig deeper and to appreciate some pearls that exist in our own faith traditions that can be so helpful, not just dogmatic.
Schools, educators, what kind of role can they play, not just in academic achievement, but also in the spiritual well-being, in this concept of faith, religion, not so much in a dogmatic sort of sense?
When it comes to schools, one of the questions that drives a lot of the work that I do is I fail to understand why it is that we're requiring our kids, especially in high school, to master things like trigonometry and calculus. But if they want to get really good emotion regulation skills, they have to experience crisis and get to see a therapist in order to learn those skills. We don't have a good enough platform to give them real clinical level skills, higher order skills that they're fully capable of grasping. There's a famous article from Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik called, the name is eluding me, Rupture and Reconstruction, I think it's called, where he analyzes the difference between pre-Holocaust and post-Holocaust Judaism, where pre-Holocaust, a lot of the education that went on happened in the home. It happened in the shtetl. People experienced, they saw what was going on around them. That's how their sense of Jewish identity formed. That's how they learned how to do all the things. That's how they learned. And the text was an element of that. The academic study was an element of that. Post-Holocaust, our education systems changed drastically in that they became very academic, where our exposure to Jewish tradition was through the text specifically. Right? It was not as much from our learning from the role models around us, learning from experience, learning from an aspect of the way Judaism and Torah became and Jewish life became communicated to us, became very academic, became very text-based, and became very theoretical. And it's time for, I believe, to move back to a little bit of the old style where people feel like they're part of the story. They're not just learning something academic. This is not something that happens when they open a book. This is something that happens when they close the book, when they leave the classroom, when they interact with others. It happens in real life, in the real world. They learn from experience. They learn from what they see around them. And for that, you need a sense of personal connection. You cannot take these subjects as purely academic subjects. Because I know in many modern Orthodox schools today, there's a big problem that they're experiencing, where parents pay fortunes on tuition and kids come out and they know everything, but they don't feel a personal connection. They don't feel connected to it. They don't feel like this is meaningful to them. They don't see how it's connected with their identity. So we're failing to some degree at that. And we need to, I think, to do better at focusing on, like, where am I in that story? Right? And I believe that a focus on Torah's contribution to social emotional learning can help with that. Because then Torah not only becomes the guide for how to keep Shabbat, Torah also becomes the guide for how do I understand myself? How do I deal with some of the challenges that I experience day to day in real life, not just theoretically. If a drop of milk fell into a pot of chicken soup, what is the law? So there's that balance to play, and if we can give kids the most powerful tools in terms of understanding themselves from a Torah perspective, I think that is one of the answers, at least.
Yeah, and I guess a similar sort of applies to being able to cope and to um, be grounded in the values without becoming defensive, reactive, especially dealing with anti-Semitism and hate and some of the things that are thrown at them that they hear, to be able to deal with it, to be able to sort of feel this is not something that's been told to me. This is something that I feel. This is something that I believe in. This is something that is part of me. So therefore, really strengthening their identity and their connection and making it their own, as opposed to this is what the teacher has told me, this is what a parent has told me, this is what some communal leader has told me. It's really empowering them to own it, if you like, and therefore feel a lot stronger. How can the spiritual life become a source of empowerment during these challenging times? We've talked quite a bit about that, and I think that, very much what you're doing in the course provides us with that. So therefore, we're quite excited about the opportunity to be able to integrate Unbreakable into our overall strategy in helping people navigate anti-Semitism, and to be able to partner with you. What do we hope that people really get out of this course? What does that mean to you, and what does that say?
So we're not going to change with this course. We're not going to change the anti-Semitism directly, but we can move people from a place of feeling out of control to a place where they feel, they may be able to say whatever they say and do whatever they do, right? But they don't have me. I mean, I guess a good way to look at it is using the bullying example. We're in touch with a bullying expert in Israel, Izzy Kalman. A lot of his work became popularized by Brooks Gibbs, who kind of went viral, where he invites these teens on the stage to bully him. And the approach, which Izzy Kalman basically was applying basic Jewish practices to develop, is that you can make yourself bully proof by responding with love, by not reacting. What the bully is trying to do in the bully victim interaction is they're trying to hook the bully victim in. They're trying to exert that sense of power over the bully victim, and they want the bully victim to be reactive to them. And that's what then feeds the bullying cycle. You can break that bullying cycle by being nice to the bully. Right? But the challenge with that approach is that most people, it's hard for them to shift gears from being bullied to being the nice guy. And I think this is where the course comes in that regard, where it helps you find that that ability to be able to put up with the uncomfortable situation of someone calling you names and still remain strong, not become hooked by that interaction, but rather recognize, well, what are the can-dos that you have at your disposal, and therefore not react, but respond from a place of strength, from a place of being able to be your best self and bring your best self to the table. And then approaches like Izzy Kalman's work really well, because then they don't have you anymore. And guess what happens? Yeah, the bullying goes away. The anti-Semite backs down, because they're looking to try to get that response reaction from you. If you don't provide that reaction because you aren't hooked by that, but rather you are resilient, you feel that innate strength that you have to be able to respond as you choose to the situation, then you're way better off in terms of being able to respond to it.
I guess, particularly for students at school where there's, colleagues that are using different phrases to try and hook them into getting upset. It's a bit harder in a larger sort of setting, but I think the ability for us to not get fazed by it and to stay focused on who we are and be proud of who we are really gives us the opportunity to have that resilience and that strength to just keep going, even when hearing, things in the media, seeing things online, etc. The similar principle applies. So finally, what gives you hope? Amongst all the challenges, we've had, plenty of challenges here in Australia and around the world. What keeps you grounded and optimistic, going forward when we see some of this stuff and we see more of it, and then you think, oh, it's already stopped, and all of a sudden there's more attacks and more experiences of anti-Semitism. What keeps you grounded and optimistic?
Well, we've been at this for 3,000 years, so we could probably go a little further. But I think what, at least for myself, what is most powerful is the ability to recognize that we're in this together. We have each other. So once we're in it together, it becomes a pain that's shared, it becomes a difficulty that's shared, and it lightens the burden for everyone. But also looking into ourselves, I think we can find optimism in innate strengths that we have, that we can realize and that we can develop. This discomfort is meant for us to grow and to shake us up a little bit so that we grow. We don't wish this on anyone. But once that this has happened, right, this is an opportunity for us to really grow from that experience, to connect with each other, to connect with ourselves, to connect with God, and to bring out abilities that we had that we never knew that existed within us. So bottom line, I think that's what brings us that sense of optimism. Ultimately, this is a very small slice of history that we're experiencing in the big picture. And if we zoom out, and there's so much that we can be grateful for, so much positive that it goes on in our world. And if we start focusing more on those things, it makes it easier to tolerate the incidents that are happening. Putting things in perspective, recognizing that for every one person that said something insulting, right, you had hundreds, thousands of other people that said and did and expressed things that are so positive and so heartwarming. And if we pay attention to those, so then the bullies fade away. Right? We stop reacting to them, and they also stop getting their power from us, our reactions.
Rabbi Zalman, it's been an absolute pleasure to be able to talk with you and to hear all the wonderful things that you're doing there in the Wellness Institute and JLI. Thanks for sharing your deep wisdom and for reminding us that resilience doesn't mean nothing gets to you. It means that you don't lose yourself when it does. In a world that's constantly shifting, resilience means having something inside you that's unbreakable and unshakable. At Jewish House, we believe that identity and well-being go hand in hand, and that's why we're so proud to be collaborating with you on this next phase of Unbreakable, bringing the course fully online for adults for the first time as part of our response to the growing tides of anti-Semitism. Once the course is ready, which I understand we're nearly there, last few edits, we'll be ready to officially launch it, hopefully with the support of government who's contributed towards the New South Wales government, who's contributed towards the development of the course and bring together community professionals here and overseas to be able to really understand what are some of the tools, how can we strengthen ourselves as opposed to keep highlighting the difficulties of it, which we need to do as well. But we also need to look at solutions both for anti-Semitism, but more generally for any kind of discrimination, any kind of bullying, which you've highlighted so well in our discussion. In the meantime, if somebody's experiencing anti-Semitism or discrimination, distress, feel free to go to our website, our platform, navigatingantisemitism.org.au to learn more. And, with that, again, I say a huge thank you to Rabbi Zalman Abraham from the Wellness Institute. I don't know if you've got a last comment to close us off, but it's been a real pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all the work you do. It's really, really amazing. Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be a part of it.
Thanks for listening to Navigating Anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism isn't always loud, but it is real and it affects lives in ways that deserve to be seen, heard, and understood. Let's keep the conversation going and work together to build safer, more informed communities. To access support, explore resources, or learn how to take meaningful action, please visit navigatingantisemitism.org.au.